It's the first summer Saturday at the spa. Let's cap the 12-race Belmont Oaks Day card here on NYRA Bets. Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets. Here with the Capping the Card episode where I'm going to go through all 12 races on Saturday's Belmont Oaks Day card at Saratoga. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get to that, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, weekly programs, and so much more. We are your one-stop shop for everything Saratoga, the Breeders' Cup, and beyond. All right, folks. Well, listen, welcome to another episode of Capping the Card. If this is your first time tuning in, the premise is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through all 12 races on Saturday's Belmont Oaks Day card at Saratoga, and I'm going to give you my top pick. That should be pretty self-explanatory. And I'm going to give you my top value play as well. Now, value plays, sometimes those are horses that I think you should really consider using in your pick sequences because I think they're legitimate win threats at a little bit more of a price. Other times, they're horses that I think might simply outrun their odds. Maybe not a win contender, but a horse that could run up into an exacta trifecta at a bigger price. I'll try to call out those distinctions as I see them, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Plenty of value, plenty of opportunities on this card. But hey, the only way we get through all 12 is to start with number one. So let's do that. Race number one is $100,000 maiden special weight, going 5.5 furlongs on the main track. And there's really two big names in this race. The number 2 Ewing and the number 6 Bento Express. And Ewing is a very serious horse. And if you're playing the early pick 5, you'd be foolish to toss that horse. You have to include that horse. For Mark Casse, sired by Knicks Go, who's a first crop sire, who's not gotten off to a particularly great start. His offspring are 1 for 10 at this point, winning in debut. But this one sold recently at the OBS April sales for $585,000. Hello, that's a pretty penny. All this one has been doing is firing off bullets for trainer Mark Casse. 37 flat gate work, going 3 furlongs. 46-3 gate work, going 4 furlongs. 47-3 bullet work. 48 flat bullet work. I mean, this one really is working nicely. Tons of early speed. Jose Ortiz aboard. You'd be foolish not to include this horse, like I said, in your early pick 5s. But ultimately, I went to a horse, Bento Express. And maybe it's just a cool story, but this is one owned and purchased by Mike Rapoli, who went over to Japan and bought this horse over there. And it was kind of a big deal, sired by Drafong, out of the dam, Tammy the Torpedo, who has a little bit more turf influence, but this one also has a lot of good early speed. 47 flat gate work, first of 114 on June 22nd. You don't see that from many Todd Pletcher trainees when they're starting out. Those sorts of really fast, aggressive bullet works. Followed up with another 47-3 gate work leading up to this one. I ride Ortiz Jr. aboard. I like the outside post position. Keep this horse out of trouble. Ride this horse. Keep him a little wide. That's okay. I just think this one looks to be really strong. Love the workouts. Love the way Pletcher's been bringing this one along. And it feels like this is a big effort here for Bento Express. So those top two are tough to get around. If you're trying to make a little bit of money in this race, in terms of maybe an exacta trifecta, maybe you decide you're going to try to upset them. I think the number 5 Empire's King is a little bit interesting. 6-1 on the morning line for trainer Greg Sacco. Manny Franco up. This one also has some nice works, particularly that 47 flat gate work back on June 13th. That was the first of 144. This one also was coming off a nice work just last week. June 28th went 48 flat, 6th of 144. So this one's got plenty of early speed. Again, was an OBS April 25 sale. So recent purchase, $60,000 by Classic Empire out of the Nyquist mare. Again, I think Manny's a jockey who knows how to be aggressive out of the gate, can get these young horses in good position. So at 6-1, Empire's King, maybe you don't think it's much of a chance to win, but a horse you could throw in to your exactas and trifectas. All right, well, let's talk about race number 2, $50,000 claimer for 3-year-olds and up, going a mile and an eighth on the dirt. And in this one, my top pick, I'd love to be more imaginative, but it's a great angle that I love playing, which is Chad Brown, Klarovich Stables, dropping a horse into the claiming ranks at Saratoga. This is what they do. This is what they're good at. They get a lot of wins doing this. So I really like this class drop. I like this move in general. This one's coming out of a very short field in an off-turf race last time out. Finished second that day to the horse Strap, but showed good speed going a mile and a quarter. We're now cutting back to a mile and an eighth. Here's the thing about a mile and an eighth with this horse. 4 career starts, never finished out of the exacta. 4 for 4 with a victory. So for a horse that doesn't always maybe win as much as you'd like, has been able to win at this distance. That's, I think, very promising. Third back in the form cycle. This one has run against much tougher company in the past. Ran against horses like Ben Duke at Arthur's Ride, Kuchar, Good Skate. There's some really nice horses. And Leading Contender was a nice horse at one point. Just never really panned out. The speed figures might be a couple of where they used to be, but for this field, I think he fits. And I think it's 8-5. Again, sired by Gunrunner. Going to be able to get the distance, I should say. Now, in terms of the value play, Unbridled Bomber at 8-1 for Oscar Brera III. Interesting horse. Another one taking the class drop out of optional claiming company. You could go back and look at that claiming 35 race that the horse was claimed out of from Jimmy Ryerson's barn to Oscar's. And you go, well, he didn't do much running in that claiming 35. Well, yeah, it was a one-turn mile over a sloppy track. Now we're going a little bit longer. The horse is 0 for 6 at Saratoga, but traditionally has faced significantly tougher competition at Saratoga, like, I don't know, the Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup. So, listen, this one's been over his head in a couple of those races, but has some nice races to run back to. His stakes place is great at stakes place, actually. Finished third in the Suburban back in 2023. So, it was a horse that, like I said, at one point was in pretty good form, has dropped off in recent years, but I still think has enough in this race to very much so look competitive with the rest of this field. Again, I think the class drop to the claiming 50 makes a lot of sense. Ricardo Santana Jr. up the 1 1/8, has 2 victories going that distance. That's promising for a horse that's only 5 for 29. So again, the ability to get the job done going the 9 furlongs is something that I really wanted to key in on. And again, I just think this one from a class standpoint makes a little bit of sense. It could be kind of where this horse starts running now in these types of claiming races, but also has been training very nicely for Brera coming into this one. Fired off a 5 furlong bullet down at Belmont Park on June 23rd. Let's head to the first of the many graded stakes races we have on the card, and that is the Grade 3 Sanford Stakes, going 6 furlongs on the dirt for 2-year-olds, and really fun race here. You can look at a horse like number 2, Obliteration, for Steve Asmussen. 7-5 on the morning line. This one's coming out of a dominant victory at Churchill Downs, won by 7.5 lengths, very professionally stalked the pace, jockeyed by Eric Asmussen that day. The sun is off, Flavian Pratt is on. That's a jockey upgrade. So you got to like to see that for Obliteration. Ultimately, though, I landed on Blinging It Back, the number 4 horse for Mark Casse. Mark Casse has a lot of good horses. Let me just say that. We saw one of them run on Thursday, Classic Q, who won the Wild Applause. He's got Nitrogen. He's got some nice 2-year-olds. He's got a barn that's firing on all cylinders right now. This one's coming out of a second-place effort in the Tremont. I know it's still a maiden. Lost to the horse Mythical, who ran a huge number that day. But here's the more important thing. Beat a horse called Romeo. Romeo came back next time out and, by the way, won the Bashford Manor at Churchill Downs going 6 furlongs for trainer John Robb. Went from running a 66 to an 85 buyer. So you like to see that. And I just think this one ran a much better race than Romeo in that Tremont and was much closer to Mythical. Ran an 85 buyer. If he can run back to that, everybody else is running for minor awards. I think Blinging It Back at 6-5. It's a short price, but that Tremont might end up being a pretty good race when you start looking at this 2-year-old pedigree and this 2-year-old crop. So one to certainly consider. Now, the other value play in this race, and again, it's a relatively short field, and I certainly would understand if anybody wanted to choose Obliteration as their top choice. But Strategic Risk at 9-2 is not a huge price, admittedly. And it's coming out of Florida Bred Company down at Gulfstream Park. But Mark Casse's bringing this one up, and it's got good speed. That's notable because speed can be the winning formula in these 2-year-old races. Just get these horses out and get them up front. Irad is up. I don't always love Irad in the lead, but in these sort of short sprints, I don't mind it as much. This horse was the odds-on favorite last time out, won by 8.25 lengths with Edgar Zayas up. I know we're stepping up from Florida Bred Company to now obviously Open Company and a graded stakes, but I feel like this is the time to do it with these types of 2-year-olds that might just be particularly precocious. Cassie's barn has been doing so well. So perhaps it's the other Cassie that you want to cast your lot with in terms of Strategic Risk being a little bit of a value play in this race. Well, let's go to race number 4 on the card. $110,000 allowance for 3-year-old and up fillies and mares going 7 furlongs on the dirt. And I ultimately am going against the coupled entry of Brad Cox with points as points, as well as the 1A Limes Don't Lie for Chad Brown. Part of it is the Chad Brown horse just isn't quite fast enough. The other part of the entry, points as points, had a big run last time out over a muddy track. First time ever over a wet track, and the horse freaked and ran 20 points better than he ever ran before in the past. That concerns me a little bit about whether or not that's replicable. It's also the first time this horse has ever shown any speed, and it was a 5-horse field. Yes, the winner of that race came back to win next time out, just as the winner of the race that this one lost to back, came back to win next time out. Oh, by the way, the horse that beat this horse 3 races back came to win next time out. So this horse has gone up against a lot of horses who've gone on to win more races. Problem is, he's got an off-the-pace running, or she's got an off-the-pace running style, which I don't really love in this sort of a spot. And again, that wet track effort last time out might be a bit anomalous given the fact that we're expecting fast and firm conditions on Saturday. As a result, I went to Belmont, Godolphin, and Junior Alvarado. Hey, they're a pretty good pair. I heard a rumor that they just won the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont Stakes. So this is obviously a trio of connections that you can trust. This horse, number 3, Ragtime, 9-5 in the morning line, was very impressive first time out. Was able to come from a little off the pace, but really sat pretty close and had that inside trip at 7 furlongs. 7 furlongs, such a tricky distance to break your maiden at, especially, as a young, relatively young, still 3-year-old. But to be able to do it on the inside rail in an 11-horse field, never easy, and didn't have the easiest trip either, because this one kind of was rushed up at one point mid-pack, sitting only 2 lengths back. They were very jumbled together. Ultimately, Junior was able to give this one a good ride, and this one draws off and wins easy. So Ragtime for me, I think 86 buyer speed figure last time out. That one seems a little bit more replicable. I think can move forward from that effort last time out for Godolphin and Mott, who has been on fire over the last month or so at both Churchill and up here in New York. So I'm going to go with Ragtime as my top selection. Now my top value play is right next door in the number 5, Artemis Sounds, 5-1 for trainer Todd Pletcher. And honestly, it's just this one, since getting back on dirt, has really done well. This one debuted on dirt way back in January 2024, finished 3rd that day, didn't run poorly, but Pletcher moved this horse to turf, and the horse ultimately ended up breaking its maiden on synthetic and running some more on turf. But a couple starts back, after coming off the bench for a pretty long layoff from October to February, Todd put this one back on the dirt in a claiming 25. And the horse won by 8 lengths, and Todd got lucky because nobody put in a claim for the horse. Stepped the horse up to an starter allowance. Horse wins by 4 lengths. Now up to a $50,000 optional claimer. Horse finishes second to Dolomite and finished ahead of Savis Melania. Both those horses came back to win next time out. So I think, making this one step up to a little bit bigger of an allowance race, I really like that a lot. I think this one might have just finally figured out what it wants to do best, and that's kind of sprinting on the dirt. And now that they've given that horse the opportunity to do that, the speed figures are more than enough to hold up to anyone else in this field. So Artemis Sound at 5-1, I think, is not a huge price. Again, a relatively short field, but I think if you're looking to get past the top 2 choices, could certainly make a lot of sense. Let's go to race number 5 on the card, which is a $95,000 allowance for 3-year-old and up fillies and mares bred in the state of New York. And we're going to go to a Christophe Clement horse in this race, and that is, Miguel Clement horse. Gosh, it's so hard not to say his father's name after him being a staple in New York for so long. But Miguel, of course, taking over the barn from his late father over the last month or so. And Miguel's got a couple of nice horses that we're going to be running this whole weekend. I like National Archive quite a bit. 3-1 on the morning line with Flavian Pratt up on the mount. This one is a bit more of a deep closer, but look at that race 2 back in October 2024. That horse, when it broke its maiden, actually sat 3rd and showed pretty good early speed. It wasn't even that slow of a pace that day. We make a lot of fun, or at least I know I do, of New York turf fractions, but that one, pretty honest. Last time out, just really came from far out of it, had to fan really wide, and also his first race back from a long time. Hadn't raced from October to May. Now you're second back in the form cycle. Flavian Pratt takes over the mount again. Pratt rode this horse to victory in that race in October. So I like this horse at 3-1 quite a bit, and think this thinks he makes a lot of sense in this field and could take another step forward from that 66 buyer that he ran last time out. Now, in terms of a little bit of a value play, this is maybe a horse to include a little bit more underneath, but the number 2 Boxed Wine at 10-1. An interesting horse as well. One who has some races to run back to, going back to last year. And again, second back from a pretty long layoff, hadn't run from November to June. Now we're second start back. And again, this horse has some nice races to run back to. 78 buyer last year up here in Saratoga has run some nice races at the Spa. So I think this one could move forward in the second start. Again, you go back and look at some of these races, he can finish underneath when she needs to. And I just think at 10-1 on the morning line presents great value. And again, maybe more of an underneath play. Maybe pair this one up with whoever your top choice is and exacta trifecta. But again, a horse that I think at 10-1 can be a useful one to include is going to be coming and picking up the pieces late too. This one's a late runner. And while there's not a ton of pace in this race, I do think that there's going to be enough. This one's proven to be able to come from off of it, and even when you have really slow fractions. So hoping that this one maybe also stretching out a little bit, maybe shows a little bit more speed and sits a little closer because those fractions might be even slower during the early portions of the race. Let's go to race number 6 on the card, and this is a $100,000 maiden special weight for 3-year-old and up fillies and mares, going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. And this is a nice race. This is a real nice race. You have the number 1 Matadora, 2-1 on the morning line for Grand Motion, coming out of a race against Nana's Love. I like this horse quite a bit, and I just think this one looks really good. And even though it's a 2-year-old race, you got to like what you had to see out of that horse. Then you can look at a horse who ultimately ended up being my top choice. You look at a horse like Gin's Beach Road. I'm sorry, I just skipped over a race. No, here we go. Here's the race that I was looking for. $100,000 maiden special weight, going for 2-year-old fillies, going a mile on the turf. That's the race that we're looking for here. Race number 6. Didn't mean to try to cheat you out of a race, but this one, really like the number 8 Corona Ranch for Wesley Ward in this one. And listen, Wes knows how to do things in terms of getting these 2-year-olds ready. Sired by War of Will out of an American Pharaoh dam. I like the idea of going longer with this one. I like the idea of going to the turf with this horse. So this horse's first 3 efforts have all been on the dirt. I think ultimately this horse is probably going to be better on the turf. And the horse ran perfectly well in the dirt too. 2 seconds and a third. So never embarrassed herself at all. I just think this one makes a lot more sense going long on the grass. 3-1 on the morning line. Victor Espinoza. That's a name you don't hear much. Up on the mount. I think this one makes a lot of sense in this race. I love the surface switch. And there's a lot of first timers here going long for these 2-year-olds. We have not seen many 2-turn races yet. You do wonder sometimes about foundation and conditioning. Here's a horse that's already got 3 races under her belt. You don't worry quite as much about conditioning. I think stretching out is actually going to be beneficial. I think she doesn't have to use quite as much of that early speed and can divvy out the fractions a little bit more. So I really like her quite a bit. I know I mentioned Matadora for Grand Motion, the number 1 horse, certainly a very good horse, one that's hard to get around and has been training very well for Graham. But again, it ran pretty evenly in debut. Didn't really show much of the ability to pass. That does frighten me a little bit. Flavian off, I rad up. That's splitting hairs perhaps, but something that is notable there. And so just something to keep in mind. Also, when you look at this one's dam side pedigree, it's all sprint. The mare has done nothing but produce sprinters. So, which is Birdie's Image. All the offspring have been sprinters. So now we're going 2 turns with this horse. I'm not necessarily sold on that, but we'll have to wait and see, particularly at a short price. Now, in terms of value play, the number 7 Connect the Stars for Mark Casse, Dylan Davis. That's a tried and true connection as well. They've been doing really well this year up at Saratoga, winning 30% of their mounts together over the last year at Saratoga with a $4.63 ROI and a flat $2 win bet. This one ran pretty evenly last time out, but made up some ground late to make me think going to want to go a little bit longer. Also had a really poor start, kind of ducked out after the break and just didn't get a lot going, was 10 lengths back early. had to was gonna go into chase mode. I think now you're going longer. I think you clean some of that stuff up. And also you have a horse to your outside, so you're not worried about the horse ducking out as much anymore. So I think that's going to be a beneficial thing. I think Connect the Stars at 8-1 presents really good value. This is a horse that's already run on the turf, has an experience, has a race under her belt. I think could build on that easily based upon that last effort. So really like that one a lot at 8-1. And again, that's a horse I think about using to try to potentially beat the favorite. All right, well, let's go to the race that I tried to talk about for a second, which is a $100,000 maiden special weight for 3-year-old and up, fillies and mares, going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. And this one, yes, this is a fun race because you got Trango Tower, number 1 horse for Chad Brown. 6-1 in the morning line. Horse has not been seen since last August, but the race that the horse came out of, Lacara won, Quick Kick finished second. Hey, that's not a bad race. So is it a key race if it was, 10 months later, 11 months later? We'll see. Chad, obviously, always very good bringing horses back off the bench. First time Lasix. There's a lot of positives here for Chad Brown. I'm going to try to play against this one, although at 6-1, you'd be foolish not to include this horse, I think, in some of your exotics. You look at a horse like Philly Freedom for Chad Brown, another one that's coming out of that race with Ragtime, who I had mentioned in one of the previous races. That one could easily take a step forward. Second time out, 8-5 in the morning line. Flavian Pratt up on the mount, taking over for Jose Ruiz. Ultimately, I went to another Cassie horse, which is Gins Beach Road. And this is one out of the dam Yellow Agate, who, of course, sired Agate Road, as well as the horse Gasoline, who was a nice horse. This one's firing off some bullets. 48-2, first to 46 back on May 21st. 47 flat, first to 15, gate work on June 4th. 47-3 up here at Saratoga, first of 18, going 4 furlongs. This horse has been working very, very well. There was a little bit of a gap in the work routine from June 4th to June 18th. That's not enough for me to raise a huge red flag. $650,000 sales price as a yearling. Clearly, there are some expectations here with this one, sired by Quality Road. So Gins Beach Road for me, 4-1 on the morning line is going to be my top choice. Whit Beckman's got a Pennsylvania bred in this race that's a little bit interesting as well, has been working well, has some decent dam side pedigree as well. So there's some runners in this race. It's a sneaky good race. Now, the horse that I like as a value play is the number 8 Practical Love for Belmont, Junior Alvarado up. I like this horse, 8-1 on the morning line. Debuted as a 2-year-old, and I think you can draw a line through that race, though the race featured Kimchi Cat and Lacara, 2 very nice horses. Goes to the bench from July until February. Mott brings the horse back on the turf down at Gulfstream. Doesn't like it. And also rusty. Next start, we're on the dirt. Nearly breaks its maiden with Johnny Velasquez aboard, but ultimately loses by a neck that day, going 6 furlongs. Then Mott puts the horse back on the turf, going short, 5.5. Horse fades a little bit late. Then last time out in an off-turf race, gets back on the main track, going 6 furlongs, admittedly over a wet track, and finishes third, but runs a 67 buyer. You isolate just the dirt races, this horse absolutely fits in this race and should not be 8-1 in the morning line, in my opinion. Now, the horse might be 8-1 come post time because people are going to see the muddied running lines and they might be attracted to some other horses in this race. But I think this horse makes a lot of sense. Junior Alvarado's never been on this horse before, which is kind of interesting. But Junior, I think, is going to get this horse to show maybe a little bit better speed. Look for this one to sit the trip that they typically sat with Johnny Velasquez, a little bit more forwardly placed. I think that's what you're going to see from Practical Love. Again, 8-1 on the morning line feels like a really good price. Well, let's go to race number 8 on the card. A $75,000 optional gamer for a 3-year-old and up. It's going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. We're going to go to my man, Shug McGahee, as my top pick with the number 4, Judge Davis at 9-2. This one's coming off a little bit of a layoff. Shug off the bench. Not always great. Not as bad as you would think, though. 12% actually over the last year with races coming back from over 180-day layoff. Feels like sometimes it's 0, except for when you get it right. Also, I love this one. Vinny Chaminade had been on the mount for this one. Now Joel Rosario takes over. There are few jockeys who are better sprinting on the turf ever than Joel Rosario. So I just love that combination of things. This one's in for the tag at 75. That might be a little bit concerning, but This one's been running around this level before, and I think running pretty competitively. Look at that race back in July 2024, optional claiming 50, won that race with Vinny aboard over a horse, Maya Prince, who won next time out. And actually, we just saw run second in a pretty nice race earlier on Thursday at Saratoga. But I think this horse has run well off the bench before at different times. And so I think this one might be able to surprise some people coming off the long layoff for McGahee, who's been working this one steadily, getting this one ready to come back. So I think Judge Davis 9-2 for me, one that I really like. I should also say the number 8 Final Verdict, another one I really like a lot for Ed Barker. That's a horse I really like with Dylan Davis aboard. Third back in the form cycle, has really been running well the last couple of times out, and has been running against horses like Works For Me and Felix, who we're going to see in stakes competition on Friday. So like the company that one has been keeping. So the number 8 Final Verdict, another one I'd be including on my horizontals. Now, in terms of the value play, the number 3 Twisted Filigree for trainer George Weaver. This one's also coming off a layoff, but keeps Flavian Pratt up, has good early speed. Nearly one off of a 14-month layoff last year. So this one can clearly fire off the bench. Yes, is facing some better competition in terms of going up against open company rather than facing New York breds, but I still think George Weaver off the bench, incredibly good. 180 plus day layoff over the last year, winning 30% of the time. You like to see those numbers. Weaver is very good at spotting horses off the bench. He's been very good at these turf sprints. Flavian rode this horse beautifully last time out, which admittedly was back in November, but lost to a horse like NYRA, who's a nice horse. Before that, it was Run Carson, run. So this horse can run against some nice horses, and I just think this one makes a little bit of sense at 6-1 on the morning line for Weaver. Let's go to race number 9, which is a $45,000 optional claimer for New York breds. They are 3-year-olds and older, going 7 furlongs on the main track. And I ultimately went to the number 4, I'm Wide Awake, for trainer Norm Cassie. Listen, this horse moved forward, first start in the Cassie barn since coming over from John Herron, and looked really good doing it. Was against New York bred competition, first level allowance, N1X, and just absolutely blew the field away as the even money favorite. So I think this one, Cassie knows how to move horses forward. Like, you just see this pretty consistently that, Cassie will claim horses. You have a horse like Awesome Aaron that's in the Suburban. That horse was claimed for $40,000 and now running in a grade 2 and already has a grade 3 win to his name. So Norm Cassie can move horses forward off the claim and off the trainer change. I think that's what you're just going to continue to see with I'm Wide Awake. 3-1 there. That's why he's my top pick. Now, in terms of my value play, Yo Banana Boy at 8-1 for trainer Destin Heath. I think this horse is a little bit interesting, certainly, and could be considered a little bit of a shot there. But ultimately, I landed on Broccoli, number 2 horse at 10-1. And the reason I landed on this one rather than the Yo Banana Boy is really more the layoff. That Yo Banana Boy is coming off the bench. Yes, Destin Heath, the trainer, has been working this horse really well. Bunch of bullets leading up to the debut in 2025, but Destin's 1 for 34 this year, not a high percentage barn. And so I was going to try to beat this one in terms of finding maybe a little bit better value. Broccoli for me made a lot of sense. A horse that, honestly, you look the last, 5-6 times out, what's this horse done wrong? Moving up through New York competition, was running in allowance races at Finger Lakes and, finished second, and then went to the new barn and, ran against state bred claiming company, finished third, but then stepped up against state bred $76,000 allowance company, finished second, then won an N1X allowance race, then finished third against optional claimer 45s off the bench, and then just ran second by a length last time out, despite completely missing the break and being 15 lengths back early. So Lane Luzzy obviously was over for a while there at Belmont at the Big A. Maybe you get a little bit of a fresh start up here at Saratoga. This one does come running late, but a 10-1 on the morning line. This one may not always get home, but man, it feels like this horse is always just hitting the board. So feels like a foolish horse not to include in your exactas and trifectas, particularly a 10-1 on the morning line. Whereas a horse like Yo Banana Boy, that's a bit more of a boom bust value play. Like, that horse could potentially win or finish sixth and by a distance. So I feel like a horse like Broccoli is a little bit more of a consistent value play at a better price, actually, at 10 to 1. All right, well, let's go to the second of three graded stakes races, which is the Kelso Grade 3, going a mile on the turf. And I ultimately went to the number 2 Intellect as my top choice, the second choice overall. I'm playing against Donegal Momentum, I should say, in this spot for Tom Morley. I like that horse a lot. I really, really do. My concern is if you look at this race, there's a lot of sprinters who are stretching out. And I'm afraid that the pace might get a little too aggressive for Donegal Momentum up front. He can rate. He's come from off the pace before, but he's going to be very close to that pace. And I'm just not sure he's going to get the trip and the setup that he needs to do the winning. So at 5 to 2, a little bit short of a price for me. I ultimately landed on Intellect at 3 to 1, third back in the form cycle after nearly a year layoff, having run over in France prior to coming over to Chad Brown's barn. This one lost to a horse, Hershey, in debut. I really like that horse a lot. Also lost to a horse, El Razine, another one I like a lot. So those are two really nice horses. This one lost to back in April at Keeneland. Then came back in that poker last time out, lost to Donegal Momentum, but made up all the ground while Donegal Momentum was able to take him gate to wire. I think you get a different dynamic this time around. I think there's a fair amount of pace in this race. There's better speed. I don't think they're going 24 and 48 going a mile. I think they're going closer to 23, 46 and 4, 47 and 1. And in that case, Intellect absolutely has the pace to run into in this spot. So 3 to 1, I really like Intellect in this race. From a value standpoint, the number 6 Mountain Bear at 6 to 1 for trainer Wesley Ward. Again, Victor Espinoza up. This one was very well regarded over in Europe and actually ran third in the turf mile at Keeneland behind Carl Spackler and More Than Looks. Had for Aiden O'Brien, then gets transferred to Wesley's barn and ran second last time out. Admittedly, a wide trip. Corey Lannery was up on the mount. Now we get Victor Espinoza up. Going to be interesting to see the sort of trip this one sits because it has some tactical speed to sit more of a mid-pack trip. Doesn't have to work out as far of an outside post position this time. I think you're just second back from a pretty lengthy layoff, having not run from October until May. Makes a lot of sense. 6 to 1. I don't think you get 6 to 1. I mean, this is a horse that is Group 3 placed over in Europe. This is a horse that finished second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf 2 years ago at Santa Anita. This is a really good horse. So a horse with plenty of ability, has faced much tougher. You go through and look at the horses this one has run up against in Europe: Rosilian, Hatem, Diego Velasquez. These are excellent horses. And then even facing horses like Carl Spackler, More Than Looks. So I think Mountain Bear makes a ton of sense at 6 to 1 in this race. Well, let's go to one of the easier races on the card to handicap, and that's the Belmont Oaks Grade 1, going a mile and 1/8 on the turf. And I don't know how much time we have to really spend talking about this one because Nitrogen, in my opinion, stands over the field. Listen, she's won 5 straight races, 4 graded stakes in a row. Yes, the last time out was the Wonder Again in a 3-horse field that was taken off the turf. But that might have been her most impressive effort yet, just simply because she showed she can handle the turf, or the dirt, I should say, after having never even worked over the dirt. So this is one for Cassie. He said if she runs well and wins this race, she's going to be targeting the Grade 1 Alabama next. There's no reason to think she won't run well here. She's your 4 to 5 favorite. She can sit a few different types of trips. She can come from off. She can sit close. She can track and come running from mid-pack. I think she just makes a load of sense in this race. I like her a lot. And listen, even if she doesn't run in 91, if she runs what she did the last 2-3 times out, she more than easily wins this race. So Nitrogen for me, probably your single, obviously, in your late pick 5 sequence. From a value standpoint, I'm going to use another horse coming out of that Wonder Again, which is admittedly maybe not the wisest decision to use a horse coming out of an off-turf race, but Mayday Ready at 10 to 1 for Joseph Lee. Interesting horse who started, of course, her career with 3 straight victories, including the Grade 2 Jessamine. And then goes that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. It's kind of overlooked at almost 14 to 1 and finishes second ahead of Nitrogen that day and loses to Lake Victoria. Goes over and runs in a Group 1, or Grade 1, I should say, over in Kyoto, Japan on the turf. Does not run particularly well that day with Frankie Dettori aboard. Finished 13th. Comes back. That's a lot of international travel. Finishes a very distant third on the dirt. I'm just going to draw a line through that. That was basically a glorified workout, in my opinion, for this horse. I think the screws are going to be more tightened, obviously, for Saturday. Mayday Ruddy at 10-1. Frankie Dettori remains up, has ridden this horse every single time out in her career. Like I said, don't forget, this one's beaten Nitrogen home. That's something that not a lot of horses can say. So I think Mayday Ready at 10-1 could be sitting on a very nice effort second back from that long layoff. Let's close things out as we only can up here in New York with a $30,000 maiden claimer going 3-year-olds and up for New York breds, going 6.5 furlongs on the main track. And I ultimately went to the number 10, Kings and Queens, 3-1 for trainer Greg Sacco with Manny Franco up. For me, this one, the last couple of times out, we're just getting there. We're getting closer. And I felt like this one ran really well a mile last time out. Comes from a little off the pace, had an inside trip, didn't even have the best trip that day, but still nearly got home. I just think this horse is improving. I think this is the right class level. You've seen a significant improvement in order of finish the last 2 times out, once dropping down to this level. Now we're getting this distance on a fast track for the first time, as the last time this one dealt with 6.5 furlongs, it was over a muddy sealed track. And so just like the fact we're getting over dry ground now, I think we're going to see a better effort. 55 Beyer speed figure last time, 59 the time before that. I'm playing against Captain Jack Sparrow a little bit for Mike Maker in this race, who's your 9-5 favorite, mainly because that last out figure, I think, might have been aided by a wet track and really comes from well off the pace. Not a lot of early speed. That's usually not what you want to see out of these maiden claiming races. Now, from a standpoint of value, the number 7, Solomio, 10-1 on the morning line for trainer David Donk. Focus on the effort 2-back. That's the race to key in on. 6 furlongs, fast track, $30,000 maiden claimer for New York breds. What did the horse do? Ran a 50 Beyer speed figure and finished second in a strung out field. I think this horse could absolutely replicate that effort. Do I think this horse can win? Maybe. Do I think this horse can finish in the top 3? You're damn right. And so if I do think that, then at 10-1, that's outstanding value to include an exacta trifecta. So I think Solomio at 10-1 for Donk makes a lot of sense. Louis Saez taking over the mount. Like seeing that. This one has shown good speed. And I think Louis is going to be aggressive. This one should feel a little fresh, coming off a bit of a layoff and a freshening. Recent gelding as well, sired by Solomini up here in New York. So I think, again, this one makes a lot of sense if you zero in on that race 2-back. That's the race to key in on. If this one can replicate that race, I think he's in a good spot to potentially end up in the winner's circle. All right, folks. Well, listen, that's going to do it for this episode of Capping the Card. Appreciate everybody tuning in as we ran through all 12 races on Saturday's Belmont Oaks Day card. Want to make sure to remind you, press that like button, press that subscribe button. We got a lot for you on NYRA Bets YouTube, whether it is race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, and so much more. Listen, folks, I hope I see you out at the spa, but if I don't, have a great and profitable day at the races. And remember, it's now post time.